So we did see that. That's the final shot.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
sweet.
So that goes up. So basically
That's 150.
Yeah. So that's welded vinyl all the way through.
Mm-hmm.
So that. Have you learned anything about that?
Yeah, we have.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, it's like the old copper tray. They're the best. It's the best system.
Yeah.
So that, that's your paint on system, which is alright on the walls.
Yeah.
But yeah, we use this now. It's just because the problem with this stuff, is you just use that, and then you use the bandages on the corner and all that. Yeah. It only takes a little bit of movement. You get a little pinprick, and mate, you get waterproofing problems. And waterproofing is the biggest enemy of builders.
There's membrane, you can just see the top of the waterproofing compound behind it.
Yeah.
So the grey.
Yeah.
So basically what happens, this is all core-filled block with reinforced steel inside it to stop it from going out because there's going to be some pressure on it.
Oh, of course, yeah.
Right, and then if you have a look at that, that's called drainage cell. So what happens with that cell, that one's a good one to look at, it's not finished. So that cell will generally go down like we've got down there. And then this stuff's called geofabric or geotextile fabric. What that does, that goes onto that. So when you put the soil down, there's a drain in that corner.
It's not going to all leach into the
Well,
stormwater.
That's right. So
Yeah.
that filters all the dirt from leaching in the stormwater, and it also having those drainage cells, they allow the filtered water to go under them and out into that drain that there's fall to. This one's got the same thing. What's interesting about this is in the centre of it is open to ground. It was a council requirement.
Yep.
That pipe there's for overflow, so it's pretty much mandatory that you either have an overflow out here or an overflow in. So what'll happen is once we fill that to dirt level, which is generally about 50, 100 mil down from the top, that'll get cut down to that height. So if you ever get a big rain period and the water builds up, rather than it breaching the top and coming out everywhere, it goes down that
Straight
drain.
down, yeah.
The interesting thing we did here, because this is so deep, it's unusual to have a planter box this deep, generally they're only up to a metre deep.
Yeah.
We're going to put half of it as blue metal filtering. So you're going to have a big layer of blue metal, and that ag line down there is aggregate slotted line with a sock over it to filter it, and the idea behind that's to help drain whatever doesn't go into the ground.
Yep.
Yeah. So that's actually teed into that outlet. That outlet goes out here into that pit you see just behind Craig. Now when you see that pit, you see that bit of RHS there, it's about 100 by 75.
Yeah.
That bit of pipe. So that pit charges, and what it does, all the silt sits in the bottom, so that goes straight out to the curb. It's clean stormwater.
Right.
So that's a silt arresting pit, which you need wherever there's dirt. Even though we filtered it, it will still have another go at arresting silt.
Yeah, right.
So that's a pretty interesting detail there. That's pretty different. You're not going to see many of them.
Yeah, that is.
And that's another really interesting detail that we had to create on the fly. So really cheaply done.
Yeah, right. Is that just what's the idea behind that?
So what the client wanted, he wanted a hardwood facade, but we didn't want a gutter out the front. So what we've done, we've created a mini box gutter that actually creates a shadow line that drops around the edge. Now there's better ways to do that, but not for the budget we had.
Right.
So basically that's a really high-end detail with a shadow in it, but we've done it cheap. So what we've done in there, we clad the whole thing in blue board. We external set it and rendered it. Then we painted the facade black and we created the shadow lines, and then we fixed these hardwood base features to it. So basically what happens, the water sheets down the top in that box gutter,
Straight
and
down.
it cascades around the edges. So you don't have a gutter, it's all waterproof, and it's a unique feature.
Yeah.
An idea behind shadow lines, and I'm sure Dan will tell you this, a shadow line's not so much about the groove you create, it's about hiding two surfaces that are flush. Because often in building, if you're trying to get two things flush, or two surfaces flush, as an example, what'll happen is if anything's bent or off, see that? That's great when that's dead flush all along.
Yep.
But what happens in building, sometimes things will run off like that, or like that. So the idea is to create a blacked out shadow behind, and rather than these two you being able to read it, they just sit back with a shadow in between.
Yeah.
It just hides imperfection. It's a neat detail.
Yeah, that's a very interesting feature.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that is quite interesting. That was
And it looks good as well from the screen.
the work that went behind that. You don't know what's involved in that. It's an absolute nightmare. Getting that waterproof meant we had to layer so much stuff behind it. And remember, this wasn't called up in the drawing. This had nothing. They were assuming they could bolt a metal frame on there to the wall. So what I did is I actually ran that slab out and I folded it down and cantilevered it. Even that slab detail is quite interesting. So what you got there is polished concrete in there, but you see this little bit of slab out the front? That's external, because the laundry is directly underneath it. So when we poured this slab, we had to actually put Zypex in it, which is a product that kind of waterproofs the slab. Slabs generally at 32 MPa are waterproof,
Yeah.
but when they crack, they're not. So what Zypex does, if it gets a little hairline crack in it, it crystallises and fills the crack. And the other idea is you can see it. Underneath it'll show crystal like salt, then you can repair the slab with epoxy.
Right, yeah.
So
yeah.
because of that little section being outdoors, I had to put Zypex in the whole lot of it. Mix a waterproofing compound in with the whole slab for that little corner that's outside.
No doubt more expensive.
It was about $1,600 for that amount of concrete.
Yeah, right. Just that small little bit on the front there.
Yeah, well, I probably could have cheated. I probably could have poured from here, Zypex the first load, which probably would have taken me to half, and then not Zypex the back end. The reason I didn't do that is it's polished concrete, and I was worried that it might change the colour slightly and you'd read it.
Yeah, right.
You can never have the steel within 40 or 50 mil from bottom or top.
Yep.
Otherwise it
Just
corrodes.
crack, yeah. Oh, yeah, from the
And
moisture.
then and then once it corrodes, it does crack the concrete.
And then you get cancer and all that
Yep.
bad stuff.
It'll come over.
Sideways here, because if I do go down, it'll pull the concrete down and it'll create a slump.
Okay.
The reason why we're having a break is just
Let it
to let it sit, dry up a bit so it's stiff enough for us to get a good finish. Otherwise it's going to keep slumping with us and pulling back and pulling away. This way we'll get the shape we need and we'll try to acquire the result that the builder's happy with. How do I look on camera?
Yeah, sorry.
See, Paul is very old school and he's Australian. You can sort of tell by his methodology.
Yeah.
But guys like this are disappearing fast. That's really sad. Because these kids aren't learning the old school stuff and the way to do it manually quicker.
Yeah.
Everyone wants to get a cordless tool on it and save time. It's not the same.
Yeah.
Underneath here is dirt and soil and probably 500 or 600, right, in solid brick, so it'll get pretty damp under there.
Yeah.
It's probably got a 50-something% humidity under there. And these timbers, these flooring timbers, they come seasoned, right? So what'll happen is, the idea behind it is, the floor gets dried and seasoned, and then when you put it down, what it's going to do, all this dampness underneath and the humidity, it's going to suck into the
rise.
board. That's
Yeah.
right. And then the board will swell because it takes in moisture. And as, for example, if you put air conditioning on, you'll notice the boards will shrink. So the idea is to get these in and leave them for about, depending on the dryness of the timber. So what we do is we moisture test it. So we get this thing here, and it works on electrical resistance. So see that? It's reading 10.6%. That's pretty dry,
Yeah, right.
right? Now, when we have our humidity tester under here, it's generally it'll be a lot more damp. So we've got that to 11.3. Right, so you're looking at that. This thing's up here.
Yep.
You'll notice the 1%, it's sucked in a little bit of moisture. These started off at 8%, weren't they?
Yeah.
So when the delivery came, they were 8 or 9%, which was really dry.
Yep.
So what would happen if we would have just slapped them down and nailed them together, where they sit on the joints here, what would have happened is they would have taken the moisture and they would have pushed on every joint. And then as it dried out again, they would have shrunk back. So the joint between every board would have been really visible. So this is called climatising a floor. So good practice is you bring the floorboards in, you lay them down like we have, and they're not nailed,
Right.
and then we let them cycle with the environment they're in,
Yeah.
and they're gonna find the natural equilibrium. They're gonna sit somewhere in the middle where they're happy, right?
Yeah.
11% is probably a good medium. They came in at 8 or 9. We had about 13 in the timber underneath at 14, so they've settled in the middle.
Yeah.
That's a good place to nail them, because it's a good guarantee that they're not going to swell and push so much. They're pretty much going to stay where they are. When they go in too dry, like I say, they blow up and they push themselves out. The other risk is where the joins are, they'll rail up. But there's a nice tight joint, right? So now imagine these push on each other because they take moisture. They'll do this. Expansion,
Yep.
right? It's got nowhere to go. On the other hand, if you put if this flooring came at 18%, it was really wet and left outside, and we put it in, what would happen as it dried? It'd do that.
Break apart.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it'd shrink, and then you'd see this. It will move around a bit, but that's the idea, to do the job properly, especially if you've got dampness underneath. You lay the floorboard, you let it
down
settle.
early.
We've let this one settle for 5 weeks, so when we nail it down, there's a good chance it'll be really stable and it won't move much. So that's another good technical thing.
Yeah.
A lot of guys don't do it, and you can end up with a floor looking like that. See, we haven't nailed that, it's just moved around, but that's what happens if
Yeah.
people put them in too wet and they dry out. So it's always important to measure them for moisture when you get them. Because if all these boards had got left on a truck for 2 weeks in transit and we didn't know and we didn't check them
Yeah.
and we laid them at 18%, that's what you'd end up with down the track.
How common is that, would you say? Like, do people use the same?
I think a lot of people, bodgy people don't, and then there's,
Some of them just put a truck.
People
Time's
don't
money.
know.
And they just think, oh, put the floor down, we'll be gone.
that's what a proper trade will know.
Yeah.
And no joke, when I started here, a lot of the guys were going, what are you doing? And I go, I'm climatising it, it needs to sit in the room. So me and one of the floor contractors knew it. For example, our owner didn't know. He thought you just nail it straight down. I go, no, it needs to sit there. And they're the little things, they're tricks of the trade that a lot of people don't get. And a lot of that's got lost in the fact that, and this is what I said to you, a lot of trades now are proper trades.